Hello everyone and welcome to Supply Chain Talk. I'm your host this evening. My name is Ian Scholar and I'm the head of the SIPS Study Centre, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. So I'll be looking after you today. Welcome to anybody new to Supply Chain Talk. I think you're in for a treat. If you are new, we don't have any fancy presentations or any funky slides. We literally have just great conversation with really interesting people. And I've got three great guests here today, which I think you will enjoy. They've got fantastic backgrounds and information. They'll tell you a bit more about that a bit later on. Last week, I had a fantastic session with Robert Ford of Mars. We had a really good conversation about enabling your team to adapt and thrive during these difficult times of constant change. I think a lot of our supply chain talks recently, we've been talking about the change, and today is also we are going to be looking at the sorts of impacts that change has on us. We're going to be looking at the whole sort of end-to-end supply chain and looking at stewardship particularly. We have got a chat, so please feel free to get on and talk to one another. I think you'll enjoy that. And also if you have any questions that you want to put forward to either myself or the other presenters, please put it in the Q&A. And we'll keep an eye on that and I'll make sure that we answer as many of the questions as we possibly can. And every week we actually give away this beautiful supply chain mug. It only comes in one colour, so you can't choose your colour, but it is really great. And we'll send it out to the person that either asks us the best question of the afternoon as well. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, which is Ankur. Ankur, are you there? Would you like to come and join me?
Hello, Ian. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Ankur. Can you tell a little bit to the audience a bit about yourself and a bit about your company as well? I think that'd be useful and relevant.
Yeah, my name is Angel, come from Barcelona, Spain, and I have developed my career inside of always in operations and supply chain in different multinationals like Samsung or General Electric and Jotun recently. I'm also having some punctual collaborations as a teacher for some courses, always related to operations and supply chain in different schools in the Barcelona area as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We had a bit of a chat last night, didn't we? We managed to get together, the four of us, so myself and the other three presenters. And we've actually picked out what we think is a really interesting article. And in fact, we were just talking about it a minute ago. I don't know if I can ask the supply chain elf perhaps to share that article with all of us. Might be worth just putting it up. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail. We'll flip through and you'll have an opportunity to have a look at this article when we finish the conversation. But I think what was really interesting was it was really focusing on how we as organisations, how we can approach the kind of issues we've had around non-resilient supply chains. We've seen that in the press recently. We've seen real widespread disruptions in our supply chains, and it talks about that. And I think we've all experienced it either through political changes such as Brexit, through COVID-19, and now, unfortunately, some of the issues that are going elsewhere in the world within the Ukraine. It's having a massive impact on our supply chains. And the way that we can deal with it is actually looking at our supply chains and working as a whole. And this is what this article is really talking about. It's about synergy. So the value of our multiple organizations in our supply chains is greater than the supply chain itself if we work together. And we were having a chat about it last night. And Ankur, do you agree that organizations should actually get together and work for the best interest of the entire supply chain network, which is what this article is about, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this article is introducing, or at least talking about two very important concepts. One of them is in my opinion key in the current scenarios. This is the resilience. In my opinion, this is the new attribute that all supply chains need to integrate to deal with the new world we are living. We are talking, and you define this kind of world. It's a world of disruptions. It's a world of wars. Unfortunately, it's a world of pandemics. It's a world of plenty of customers. Very, very demanding. It's a world of uncertainty. So today, more than ever, resilience in our supply chains is totally key. And it's a relatively new concept. We have been always talking about service, efficiency, cost, but not too much about resilience. Is now where we are really focusing on this concept. And then how we can get this resilient, because we can be more proactive or reactive. What we can see in the companies after this explosion of events is the people they tend to defend, so it's acting as a more reactive way, and the first actions we are seeing in many companies is to increase the stock, to have a better response and to ensure the service to the customer, but with a higher cost, obviously. So probably this is the price that we have to pay to increase our resilience when we have not a very good end-to-end supply chain visibility. Okay, so we could say that there is not an efficient resilience without a good end-to-end supply chain visibility and stewardship. So this is for me is a key concept. Resilience and then full visibility of our value chain is something that needs to go very close and together. But at this point, I think it's healthy try to center some definitions, because probably if you are asking to the people about what means end-to-end supply chain visibility, we can find 10, 20, 30 different definitions. No? So, this is especially because, in my opinion, because many people, we tend to think that the end-to-end supply chain, and especially end-to-end supply chain visibility, starts when we deliver something to the customer from our warehouse through different distribution center, houses. Is there when we have to monitor and tracking our product to see if it arrives to the customer on time. But I think we should go much more upstream and go to the beginning of everything. The beginning of the value chain is the design, and the end is if when we deliver to the customer, or even the after sales or the reverse logistics. So we have to have also visibility there. But for me, one of the main challenges and one of the blind spot in the value chain is the first link, let's say, the supplier, and even more, the supplier of the supplier. We have not visibility of that. And the first disruptions started in this part of the chain, and we cannot see it, so we cannot react. We are very reactive, not proactive, because when the disruption happened, we were not aware before, isn't it? So in order to fix a definition of the end-to-end supply chain visibility, I have taken the Gartner definition, which will be more or less the capability that provides control, access, and transparency to accurate, timely, and complete plans, events, and data within and across all organizations, and this is a very important point, all organizations of the value chain, to support an effective planning and execution of supply chain operations. To take a common definition, I think this is a very valid one. So the entire process need to be tracked and registered because and accessible, because this gives us the opportunity to make a good analysis, because the real value of the visibility is to analyze the information we can see in order to optimize and improve and take decisions. So it is clear that we cannot control or manage what we cannot see. So, it is that part of the definition of the Gartner definition that mentions all the organizations in the value chain that adds to another interesting concept of the article, which is the synergy. For me, it's a key concept as well, is the synergy between all the actors of the value chain.
Brilliant. I absolutely agree. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Scott and Renee in now to join us in this conversation, because I think we're hitting on some really important bits. And I know for myself, talking to people. So Scott, Renee, would you like to join us as well? Fabulous, excellent. Renee, would you like to just say a little bit about yourself and your organisation?
Yeah, my name is Renee, and first, thank you for the introduction. I am, what I call myself, a procurement professional who've had the pleasure of implementing strategic procurement in 3 Danish organizations over the past 15 years, and latest with Hempel, which is a major coatings company, mainly for industrial coatings, but also for decorative around the world. And then I stopped there a couple of months ago and has recently joined a Danish consulting company called Cillian Consulting Group, where I am to, let's say, help medium-sized production companies to improve their procurement skills, looking forward to that and developing a program for that. But I would say for me the main point here is to talk about the procurement aspect into the supply chain.
Good, lovely. Thanks, Renee. Scott, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Good morning. First and foremost, thank you for having me today. My name is Scott Buber. I am currently with WSI. We are a premier third-party logistics company. I've been in the industry for over 28 years. My specific focus is sustainability within the supply chain, as well as chemical logistics and chemical operations. One of the main focuses of my partaking of this conversation is to talk about end-to-end sustainability and partnership, and some of the nuances that we've experienced on our end, and some of the solutions that we've come across as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scott. And a bit later on, we're going to talk about visibility, but I'm quite interested. There was something in the article when it talked about synergistic supply chains, and let's assume we all agree that this is the way forward with synergistic supply chains. So how do we overcome and break down those barriers that we have across the supply chain? Picking up what Ankel was saying, about that visibility. So how do we break down those barriers? What do you think? Renee, let me come to you first.
I think that the main reason is to, as you also discussed and as the article also addressed, is for the different parts of the organization to talk together and to define what is, let's say, the key importance for the specific company, because it for different companies, different things are important. And I agree very much with Angel, and sorry for calling you Angel, but it just happens when I see your name. But that the, let's say, the last couple of years has proven to us that we don't know where the problem comes. And you could call it resilience, but you could also call it risk management, where you need to define where is it, let's say, the most critical parameters is it, let's say, and there's no doubt that every process is a critical parameter, because you got to get the raw materials in, you got to produce it, and you got to get it out. But there are, let's say, some markets which is more important. There are some raw materials which is more important. There are some of the products which is more key for, let's say, the profitability of the company. And I think that that's where you need to sit together within the company and define what is it that we need to be in control of. Because if you're going to sit with, let's say, every raw material you have and find out, backwards integration, where does the raw materials come from, 2 or 3 steps out, you're going to drown yourself in work. Plus that there are specific suppliers who won't, let's say, advise it. But if you go out and say, okay, yeah, but these, 80-20 rule, these 20% of the raw materials are the ones we need to have the backup plan for. We need to increase the safety stocks off, etc. Yeah, but then I think it can, let's say, then I think it can work. And then, of course, take that out and do that for your distribution as well. Where is it that you need to, let's say, start with having the visibility rather than just waiting to see what happens, because that's what the last couple of years has proven to us that well, if you do that,
I can see Scott nodding there. Do you want to come in? Do you agree with that? And
I absolutely do agree with it, and I want to hit on one of the points that Angel had made earlier. When we talk about visibility and we talk about sustainability and those things, resilience is key. And one of the main things that really gets me is we talk about, we want to return to normal. We want to get back to the way it was before the pandemic or before Brexit or what have you. Though there is no old way, it's now the new normal. And one of the things that we hinge upon is like you said, Renee, is learning how to curve our operation or our supply chain management system around the new normals, the constraints that are built within today's economic system. And as we look at these things, it's hard to ascertain how we can avoid going down the proverbial rabbit hole. You talk about, hey, let's drill down and see where our suppliers are and where we can get our raw materials. And then do we have a backup plan? And as you said, we continue to go down this rabbit hole. But one of the things that is very helpful is partnering that synergy, getting that synergy, partnering with folks that are like-minded, have the same core values, and are able to offer solutions so you can focus on the bigger picture. As an organization, the bigger picture is how do we get our product to the end users in the most efficient, safest manner as possible. And as you develop these synergies, if you will, you can then explore different options through that system. That's one of the great things about partnering with third-party logistics folks is they're able to provide those solutions for you. In my current state, we are seeing more and more issues that hinge upon labor problems where folks are no longer desiring work. So we're struggling in the labor pool. We find that the raw materials are blocked in the port. So even though we might have solutions from a trucking or avoiding demurrage at all costs, whether it's rail, air freight, trucking again, we are still seeing that when we partner and jump in line to develop a solution for our customers, we're able to allow them to focus on the bigger picture. One of the last things I'll state is, in the sense of reliability, is we have to have the same high standards. And developing that trust is paramount because of the unforeseen nature of what the world has become today.
Yeah, Scott, that's brilliant. Thank you. And Ankel, I mean, obviously, one of the things we want to talk about today is this whole thing about end-to-end supply chain stewardship and what that actually means for us. But picking up on what Scott just said there, do you think there's such thing as a right third-party logistics provider? Do you think they exist?
For me, yeah. I'm talking about what listener Scott and talking about synergies and how important is a third party very well aligned to the company to create these synergies. I think this is one of the main challenges I see. It is to have a complete value chain with all the actors in a good synergy and harmony is like a dream. But if we go to the real life, it's really difficult because it's even difficult to have your company, only your company, in a very good alignment. Imagine if you have to add different actors to the equation, because the world is, the business is more global, and we are not talking about the company who is delivered to one haulier and the final customer. There are different actors playing this game, different distribution centers, different hauliers, probably different modes of transport. And for me, the challenge is that is the lack of alignment, because every organization included in the value chain probably has their own value proposition, priorities, or objective. But the value chain has only one value, and a unique value, which is the customer value. So it probably could make that every actor tend to focus on their own value and priorities instead of the collective value. I think this is the big challenge: how to align everything in a only one unique value to the customer.
Excellent, thank you. And Rene, do you agree?
No, I fully agree, but I think that it's also a bit of the let's say one of the differences between, for instance, US and Europe. Because if you go to US, you can find some really good three-party providers that can cover distribution in all of US and give you that visibility. But when you come into Europe, who is good in logistics in Norway with the geographical, let's say, way that Norway is, and who is good at distribution in Spain? I have to admit, I have not yet seen let's say a logistic provider who is good in all over Europe, because a lot of them then, let's say, will go out and connect with some of the local ones for the distribution, and then it's suddenly, let's say, you lose a bit of the ownership if you, let's say, have a contract with somebody who then subcontracts. And again, with the stewardship that we talk about here, but then it's also about that suddenly you maybe lose track with who's actually doing the distribution to the customer. And that's where I think that you can have, let's say, regional things where if, for instance, Spain and Portugal, you can find suppliers who can do both. You can find suppliers who can do Sweden and Norway, but finding one supplier, and of course, depending on your, let's say, your way of distribution, because if everything you do is full truckloads and business to business, well, yes, probably you can find some really good ones. But if you, let's say, have a mixture of full truckloads, different factories all over Europe, different markets, then I think that you need to let's say have more than one. But where I do agree with it is that you can get some of this, let's say, distribution software, so you get the visibility, and you need to have logistic providers who then can feed you the visibility, so you always have track of, let's say, maybe not and we had a talk about that yesterday, where where are the products right now this second all over Europe. I don't think let's say not many can do that right now, but at least keep the visibility on how many shipments and what's the size of it, and giving the data, so you also are able to improve both from a sustainability point of view, but also from let's say a cost point of view, because to be honest, those two things often go hand in hand.
Exactly. And Scott, can I come to you? So when we're talking about end-to-end stewardship, and this is a good question really, is what does that mean to you then? What does end-to-end supply chain stewardship mean to you, Scott?
Well, anytime that you insert a partnership with someone, end-to-end stewardship is from inception to the very end, right? So from the very beginning. So in my definition, if you will, it surrounds itself about being faithful. Number one, you are who you say you are. Do you walk the walk? You obviously talk the talk because you got the business, right? So we have to deliver the very same speech through our actions. And the way that happens is we deliver on time. We make sure the product is delivered with care. It's done safely. We have total communication. Renee, I'm going to piggyback off what you mentioned about the lack of communication. Yes, Europe is a huge ball of wax. There's a lot of unknowns, uncertainties, but I think that with the right shipping or warehouse management software, there's a level of communication that takes place, and it alleviates the unknowns, at least in this day and age right now. And as far as costs, yeah, there's always a cost, and the software with that, the cost can be extreme. When you partner with someone, you thereby alleviate yourself of a cost because you're probably paying just for the service, and it comes bundled with the software and the tracking and the visibility through communication. But going back to the original question, when we talk about stewardship, we want to make sure that you build total confidence, not just with vain words, but by your actions, how you compose yourself in the realm of the industry. And as word of mouth spreads and you show that you're reliable and you're able to get things done, I think that is what builds your reputation of being a faithful steward within the industry.
Brilliant. Okay. And Ankel, would you agree with that? Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think there is I totally agree with Scott, and I will say that another important thing is the commitment. So there are different actors in all the supply chain also, and it's need to be very clear or very well defined what every actor has to do, what and how every link has to deliver to the next link of the chain. So needs must be very well understood by all the actors, and we have to have the commitment of yes, we are aligned, everybody understand what we need from everybody, and then we are going to do it. So and I think Scott also introduced the concept of safety and sustainability that I think is very, very important in the definition of the end-to-end supply chain stewardship.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And what about yourself, Renee?
No, but I agree as well, and I think that for me, let's say the way that I understand the word stewardship, it's about doing it right. It's about minimizing, let's say, the risk, both from a safety point of view, but also making sure that you, let's say, continuously try to improve what you have. But for me, it's also, and then of course it's let's say different companies can have, let's say, different ways of doing it right. But for me, it's very much, I have a background with Hempel where majority of the products were dangerous goods, both on a raw material basis coming in and of the finished goods going out. And of course, that limits the amount of suppliers that you can get. But it's also where, for me, one of the things that was important in the setup was that we had as few hands over in the supply chain, because again, dangerous goods, if it, you load it, it goes directly to the customer, it's good. If you load it, it goes into a warehouse, but still with the same distribution provider and goes out, it's good. But if you load it and it goes to a warehouse and somebody picks it up that you don't know who is and deliver it to the customer, that's for me, let's say, not stewardship. It's about knowing, how it gets from A to B, and having a knowledge of it. But it's also about finding the right partners. And I remember one example where we had a warehouse handling raw materials, and as I said, some of these raw materials, or more than 50% of the SKUs, were dangerous goods of different kinds. And we had one example where the warehouse came to us, and it was a warehouse in Holland, and they came to us and said, our safety departments do not agree to some of the dangerous goods classifications. And we were like, okay. And we didn't make the classifications, our suppliers did. And we were like, okay, yeah, but, in a busy world, maybe we try to not care too much about it. But then when we actually thought about it and stopped up and say, hey, yeah, but for me, that's a good example of stewardship. We actually have a supplier who are concerned about the safety of their staff, who are concerned about the safety of the truck drivers who comes and picks up the goods. And it didn't really matter whether they were, and I have to admit, the warehouse were right in some of the examples, so we did have to change it. But the part of having suppliers who actually challenge you on these things instead of, let's say, it doesn't care. And I think that for me, as I said, that's a good example of stewardship, because we actually contracted with a supplier who cared. And I think that's at least that's one example that I remember.
Excellent. Thanks, Remy. And where does environmental responsibility sit in all of this? How do we help our supply chains become much more environmentally aware? Scott, do you want to say anything about that?
Absolutely. I think it falls in line with accountability. You really look at what you're engaged in, and you have a risk assessment. So when you take a risk assessment in conducting business, you want to make sure that your partners are all informed. So we talk about the links of the supply chain. We have to hold each other accountable. And how is that done? It's done by recognizing the risks, trying to determine what mitigates those factors within your operation, and also those operations that feed into your chain. So with the communication comes accountability. With accountability, holding each other accountable, it's not a pointing game, pointing fingers at each other. It's not that. It's not a contest. We all have the same mission. We all should be like-minded. And while there might be some differences and some core values, the bottom line is we all have the same goal. And the goal is what? To make sure that from conception to the end user, the product gets where it needs to be safely, and it's done in a reliable and efficient manner. So when we look at how do we hold each other accountable, again, it's expressing what is the risk involved in this operation.
Brilliant, thank you. And Ankel, would you like to add anything to that as well?
I think Scott mentioned the key words: accountability, commitment, and for me, alignment is one of the key things to ensure that the flow across all the supply chain is smooth, and in terms of deliver the value and safety and sustainability. I insist maybe too much in the word alignment, but I think this is one of the keys, because there are different actors, different organizations, and it is very difficult to align everybody in a same objective. It's very difficult, really, in the real life. So it's something that we need to get in the chain.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting thing, actually, just reflecting back to the article. Really, there was a bit in there talking about which we've already mentioned a little bit, but about the operations team and the finance team often having different language, different terminology, perhaps looking, not having shared goals, and that I would imagine. I don't know what you think about this, Rene, but I imagine if we can actually have that throughout the whole supply chain, so we have similar language, similar shared goals, and things like that, that's got to help us. What do you think, Rene?
Yeah, but I think that it's true. But I also think that it's sometimes it's difficult goals to do. But there is one. I was having a beer with a let's say a friend of mine here in the weekend, and he was extremely frustrated. And the reason he was frustrated was that he is sitting in a supply chain position, and when raw materials increased and profit goes a little bit down, he is contacted by finance going, the same route as they did previous. We have to reduce the stocks. Because that's what, traditionally people have done if they are, working capital is king or was king, probably to a certain degree still is, but they were doing the same things. And at the same time, when you're in a supply chain situation, fighting with getting products, fighting with, getting both products into the factory, but also out to the clients. And then you are asked to do a stock reduction exercise. Again, a good example of at least one company where let's say the different departments do not, really align on what is best for this company. Mm-hmm. And I think that let's say to turn it around to say, yes, it is important to define, where is it that we as a company want to go, and how should we go there? And of course, there are certain things they know, there are certain things they don't know, but it's also a moving target where let's say today's situation with challenges with Ukraine, with the shipping, getting containers from A to B, let's say it calls for a different way of doing things than before. But one thing that I just want to pick up on as well, that was Ian, your question before in regards to stewardship and let's say the environmental issues. And one thing that I am actually, let's say, or have been missing in many times with having distributors or logistic companies is actually logistic companies coming in and telling us as customers what we can do better. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit of a catch or catch-22, because if the logistic company tells us as a customer how we can, let's say, improve. Mm-hmm. And improving is, filling the trucks up more, let's say doing more, which means that often the improvements comes, with less turnover for the logistic company. Yeah. But let's say it's still my hope, and I think that it's still that if they actually come out and help people to improve continuously, it also means that customers are, let's say, willing to stay longer, because in many times, but logistic is a major cost in the end-to-end, and you need as a company to be competitive. And then you can define, how do you put the sustainability part into it, because you need to have certain, let's say, standards in regards to, and ensure that you don't have let's say drivers who are not paid accordingly, or you don't, drivers who doesn't follow the rules and legislation, but you still need to once in a while, tender your distribution. But if you actually had distribution companies who came out and said, hey, yeah, but we can help you reduce, not so much, well, one thing of course is the cost, but we can help you reduce the CO2 emissions by coming with advice on how you can do things smarter. That's one of the things that I have been missing. I know that there are some suppliers who do it, but of course I have to admit I have tried to work it into contracts over the past years, but not always that successful.
It's difficult. Thank you, Ren. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so I've just a last question. So we're nearly at the end, and it goes so quickly. It goes so quickly for us. So we've got about 5 minutes or so. So the question I'm going to ask each of you is then, how do we get greater visibility in our supply chains then? It's a really key thing. We've just talked about part of stewardship. We've said getting real understanding of what's going on and really looking at all of the issues, the environmental issues, the safety issues, the visibility of where our goods are, how they're being handled, where they're being stored, how they're being transported, all those sort of things. So how do we get better at that? So let me start with you, Scott. So how do we get better at getting that visibility?
Well, the future definitely hinges upon artificial intelligence, right? So there are firms currently that produce software that gives you real live, up-to-date tracking on where the raw material goods are, where the product is in the shipping process, whether it's in a harbor, port, container yard, whether it's on the water, in the air. So it's all real live tracking, number one. Number two, it cuts all the red tape between the different agencies or companies involved in that process. So it's definitely something that as a third-party logistics provider, it kind of gets me wanting to delve into that area, because right now our visibility hinges upon a tracking number or a freight forwarder or someone that might get back to me same day or later on in the week, depending on where they are in that time frame. With that said, there's companies out there that service several different groups, particularly in the United States. I know the Department of Defense, NASA, and some other agencies are currently using this software to track their raw materials. Different manufacturing over in Indonesia, China, what have you. One of the main providers is called Interos. I'm not trying to sell them by any means. It's just an interesting thing that's come about over the last few years. And while it is practically new, it's something, the wave of the future. So current state, it's really about communication, establishing those lines of communication, and it has to be reliable communication. Again, one of the problems is within the chain, everyone has different values. And so a request from one part of the chain may be something that someone looks and says, you know what, I'll get to that later. Whereas another provider may look at that and say, oh, I need to get on this right away. Mm-hmm. So the problem exists is how do we make sure that all communication is seen as valuable, number one, and the receiver of that question or that need feels valued as well. And one of the ways you can do that is making sure we are paying attention to detail. We're providing the information clearly as to what is being asked. So we're really answering the question asked and not giving vague responses.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scott. That's a brilliant answer. Thank you. Renee, come to you. Sort of what would you like to see to get greater visibility in your supply chains?
No, but I think that I don't think, I guess your question was, how do we improve it and what's to do next? And I don't think that there is, a magic way to do it, because I think the challenge is very different from company to company. And I do believe that in some companies, maybe, full visibility all the way through is, let's say, next step. But I think that for many companies, it's about, it's about making sure that you take it step by step. And I think that it's I think that for myself, it's about making, you could say, a maturity assessment of the current supply chain, and maybe getting somebody in to help, or maybe take somebody from within the company to sort of make an assessment on where is the challenges there. Because if you put finance, supply chain, procurement, and even commercial in the same room, many times they're going to be on within their same, let's say, within their same field that they have been historically. So I think that it's about making an assessment of the supply chain, finding out where is the current pain points, and then making it step by step, because it is something that takes quite a long time to change. And if you want full visibility, which I agree could be, that's for the really top maturity. But you need to work it with all your suppliers. You need to work it with all your, let's say, logistic companies. And it takes a long time to let's say, incorporate. And many of your current suppliers may not even be able to live up to it. So it's about making, let's say, just to wrap up and say, it's about making the assessment, find out what is the pain points that you need to take a step to continue to improve.
Thanks, Rene.
If I may, yes. There's one thing I'd like to feed off of that. That's very great. Currently in our, again, in the United States, our current in-house IT group is able to do exactly what you're saying. They're able to ascertain what issues exist. They're able to determine what the cost is for a given solution. And there's always there's never just one solution, right? There's levels. Yeah, there's different levels. Yeah. Let's be honest. So do you want the value plus, or do you want the huge high end solution here? And one of the things that I've learned in watching and how they create these real world solutions is they give you a menu, if you will, and you're able to a la carte the things that you want, the things that you feel important. And yes, if you have a room full of your financial, your operations, and all the different levels within the industry in the same room, the silos exist. I think that by allowing the a la carte system and talking about the different levels of solutions, you're able to break those silos down and create a synergy within the room. I think that can happen.
And I think that's where sometimes you need somebody from outside to let's say, what's the right word, to facilitate it, in order to make sure that everybody is heard, but also to identify again what is important for the individual company, and also to say that at least, and that's my personal belief, that you need to take it step by step, because again, if you have no visibility today and you want to go to full visibility, that's a major step which can go wrong in many parameters, where you could say you need to break it down and eat the elephant by bit by bit.
Right.
I think that's something that you need.
I would like.
That's it. And Ankul, final word from you, Ankul. So, would you like to?
Very, very, very quickly. I think the use of the new technologies is key and paramount to improve all this chain. But there is a step before, because before buy the technology, because there is a lot of options in the market, I think there is a previous step very important, is to identify which kind of information and data that today we don't have or we cannot access, we will need to allow us to take the right decisions, and always link it to the strategy of the company and to the value proposition and customer expectations. So I think because oftenly we are starting to look in the technology in the market without having very clear what kind of information is really relevant for us. I think this is a previous step before choose the technology.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I just had a question, literally a last question that's popped up. Some of the supply challenges may be unique to each country, and some cuts across all may affect the supply chain goals despite the realignment and commitment of the supply chain partners, what are the practical ways of navigating against these challenges, which some of them may be unforeseen, in order to realize the desired goals? Just one comment from any of you just to answer that. Some of those supply chain
Communication.
What was that, Scott?
Sorry. Communication.
Communication.
Yeah, but if and I know you said one comment and so on, and I know that we are at the end, but I think it's also understanding. It's also understanding, how different ways. For instance, let's say one of the countries that fascinates me the most in regards to logistics, it is Indonesia. Because hardly anything goes by truck in Indonesia. It's boats to different islands, etc., etc. And again, if you were to set it up, you need to have somebody who understands the way logistic works in Indonesia. And I think that's where, especially when we talk global, I agree that communication is important, but understanding is also important, because you need to know the locations, because everything is not the same.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Exactly. And it falls in line with regulatory compliance.
Yeah.
The different countries, how do they fit together, right? And when you cross those borders, if you will, how do you transition with being compliant all the same? So it does hinge upon understanding, which I think comes about from communication.
Yeah.
Just making sure that we're not only asking the right questions, but we're also giving the right answers.
Yeah.
And don't forget to learning. I think learning is a very good part of the equation, is understand why the things are happening and learn for the next time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And cool, gentlemen, what a fantastic afternoon. I hope you all enjoyed that. I'm going to give this mug actually to Frederick, which was the last question we just had, which was superb. A really great question there. So that's gonna be coming, winding its way to you. Thank you. I think that was a really interesting conversation, and we probably could carry on for at least another couple of days. So great meeting you all. Thank you very, very much. Please, for those of you that are listening, please, this is a weekly talk, so please come and join us again next week, Wednesday at 4 o'clock. That'll be lovely to see you all there then. And I only want to just say thank you, Ankel, thank you, Renee, thank you, Scott, for your time. And yeah, it was really, really good. And hopefully we'll see you again, because I think we've got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for attending today. Thank you all the guests. See you very, very soon. Next episode will be on the 11th of May, 4 o'clock. We're going to be talking about social value. So please be there. So take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.